research manager at the Environmental Integrity Project. And they've just come out with a report that suggests that $9 billion in subsidies have gone to companies, 84% of which have violated air pollution limits. And it's even worse than that because of the disproportionality of where that pollution is. But I'll let her talk to you about that. Alexandra Shaykevich, welcome.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
I can't hear. Of course, of course. So billions in our tax dollars go to subsidize these companies or these tax breaks that they have. Can you speak to where the billions come from?
That's right. So our report looked at 50 plastics plants across the U.S. that were recently built or expanded. And we found that 2/3 of them received upwards of $9 billion in taxpayer subsidies. Yet 84% of them violated their air pollution control permits within the past 5 years. And none of these plants were forced to give up any of their subsidies for breaking environmental laws. We looked at a few state programs. The majority of these plants are located along the Gulf Coast, but we also see some plants in Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and elsewhere around the country. And $9 billion, we were just shocked by that staggering figure.
Yeah, Tony's got a little bit of a graphic you can see. That's the Gulf Coast. The bottom part is a close-up of the wide part, shows you in the top picture there, sort of graphically, where these plants are. So we're talking about 591,000 people, according to your report, who live within 3 miles of these plants are people of color. So you're suggesting that the discharge, the illegal discharge of environmental toxins from these plants disproportionately affects these people of color, 2/3 of whom live there near the plants.
That's right. So within 3 miles of these plastics plants, our research found that, as you mentioned, 66% are people of color. That's well above the national average of 39%. A lot of these folks are also living next to multiple plastics plants. As you could see from the graphic you just showed, these facilities are clustered. And oftentimes these communities are living not just next to plastics plants, but other industrial sources of air pollution, and they're completely overburdened. What we found is that just the 50 plants that we looked at in this report, they released tens of thousands of tons of dangerous air pollution every year, and greenhouse gases as well, upwards of 63 million tons of climate warming pollution. And that's just what they reported releasing illegally during their routine operations. On top of that, what we found is that 94% of these facilities also reported emissions during malfunctions, breakdowns, and other pollution events. These are things that occur when there's a fire or an explosion, and sometimes endangered not only the health and safety of the workers at these plants, but of nearby communities who are forced to deal with the consequences.
Well, the natural disasters that affect a lot of these communities are storied. I mean, this is an area along the Gulf Coast, anyway, that is affected by hurricanes, and walls of water come into this area that's called the Chemical Coast for a reason. They are flooded by these walls of water that essentially commingle with, there are more Superfund sites there than any other place in America. And Superfund sites are places that are so badly toxified that the Environmental Protection Agency is dumping all this money into those areas to try to detoxify them. But anyway, they're more there than anywhere else. So this wall of water comes in and it just floods everywhere. So all those chemicals, all that stuff, all those toxins go everywhere. And then now, based on your report, you realize that even when the floodwaters recede, you're dealing with a population that's inundated with toxicity.
Yeah, this is well over 500,000 people. And we're not just seeing events such as floods and hurricanes along the Gulf. We're also seeing inclement weather from harsh winters and freezes. So a lot of these plants, what we also saw is an uptick in these incidents when there's a loss of power, and that could be the result of a hurricane. It could be a pipe freezing somewhere along the pipeline delivering electricity or gas to these plants. So 94% of them, again, we just thought this was an incredible figure, over 1,200 incidents that we counted. And some of these, it led to evacuations of nearby communities, school closures. We read reports where workers were seriously injured, going home with third-degree burns and other very serious injuries, because these plants, as you mentioned, they handle hazardous chemicals. Some of them are facilities that handle hazardous waste on site, in addition to making these plastics products. So it's just very unfortunate.
Well, I was just looking to see the last time they had one of these discharges of toxins, in the Bay Area, where we have a lot of our listeners and viewers. We have this Richmond. Richmond's a place in the Bay Area where there is a lot of this discharge from various petroleum facilities, primarily. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, or you can add some specifics if you want. But more to the point, it's kind of what communities are sort of having to put up with. And these aren't even depressed communities, some of them. They're not even communities that have been traditionally, sort of mistreated by a lot of corporate America. They're communities that everybody's doing well, and all of a sudden they're dealing with these discharges. So your report, I guess is what I'm saying, is buttressed by a lot of this what I would call just sort of a personal experience that we've had with this stuff. But the thing that's most galling is that there are more and more of these plants opening, and you note this in your report, and they're opening with state and municipal subsidies to help them get going. These are subsidized industries that are violating all these laws.
Absolutely. And oftentimes these are multi-billion-dollar companies that are wholly or partially funded by foreign governments. There's a plant that we highlight in the report that opened in Texas that is, partially funded and operated by a Saudi Arabian SABIC, but they're owned by the Saudi Arabian government. So one of the richest countries in the world was receiving taxpayer subsidies from Texas schools, actually. And I think that's really important to mention, is that this money that we are subsidizing this expansion with, this is money that communities are not receiving to improve their school systems, to improve their roads, to pay their frontline workers, their fire departments, and basically to provide just basic public services that I think every American will agree not only do we need, but we need to support those services now more than ever.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, that I think a lot of these plants opening are associated with jobs for the community, et cetera. And the reality is there's not evidence that that is in any way offset by the damage done by these communities based on your report. I mean, this is just astounding what's here. Despite frequent claims by the industry that it would protect the environment, 84% of the plastic plants, 42 out of 50, violated their air pollution control permits over the last 3 years. That's according to the EPA's compliance online database. And 63 million tons of greenhouse gases in 2021. That's as much as 15 coal-fired power plants. Again, reading from your report. And it's not just greenhouse gases, okay? It's benzene, which is a carcinogen. It's a very dangerous carcinogen. There's nitrogen oxide, which contributes to smog. Tons of carbon monoxide, which can cause headaches, dizziness, and can collect in the lungs and has been linked to emphysema. So you realize that, and I just stopped there. It goes on and on and on. And this is a really alarming report. Is it getting any traction in media? I mean, obviously, being on this show will kick open your media presence. But I mean, apart from this.
There has been some traction, especially in the communities where these plants are located. We've seen some really high-profile facilities open up in recent years, heavily subsidized by taxpayer money. And actually, that's what prompted this report, is that we, after speaking to community members and understanding what's going on, and just listening to folks that are living within a few miles of some of these plants, especially the Shell Monaca plant, which is an ethylene cracker that recently opened up in Pennsylvania, in Beaver County. And it's really shocking what these folks are reporting. Not only are they seeing, it's not just air pollution, there's also water pollution. They're seeing discharges into the Ohio River, and they're also plagued by light pollution as well as noise. These plants operate 24/7. You have to deal with the generators, you have to deal with excessive flaring, which not only emits pollution, but it also lights up the night sky. So, imagine not being able to sit on your porch and just see the stars as a result of these plants, which are built and designed to operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So it's just constant. And that's what these folks are dealing with.
Well, and Alexandra, you talk in your report about the fact that most of this toxicity, that of which there is just tonnage and tonnage and tonnage, there is no real special event associated with it. It's just routine use of the plant, and through the routine hours and hours, day after day, as you suggest, this is the toxification of the environment around it that just follows a routine use of the plant, I guess is what I'm getting at. I love that you're here. I love that you've made contact with our show, because I'd love to have you back. I know that in your role as the research manager at this Environmental Integrity Project, and you're the author of this report. It's called Feeding the Plastics Industrial Complex. We'll have a link to it below this video. But you really know a lot about the gas business and oil business and fossil fuels industry. And I'd love to have you back, because I'm told that we have a lot to do with the fossil fuels industry in this society. And it would be great to speak to you more. So I hope you'll come back and visit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, Alexandra, thank you so much. Alexandra Shaykevich from the Environmental Integrity Project. Right on. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.